Premier Doug Ford, he refers to the leader of the NDP's criticisms of his rush to reopen as nails on a chalkboard. Now, I would tell Doug Ford that the phrase nails on a chalkboard is like nails on a chalkboard to women. Um, and I think that's pretty obvious that it's I think it's pretty obvious that it's a sexist comment, but I want to play this clip, one, to show like how much of a pig he is, but also kind of we'll have a meta conversation about how the media is talking about what it's talking about and emphasizing. So here's this exchange, and also NDP leader Horvath's response, which is good.
I've obviously listened to the chief medical officer from day one. I've never wavered from that. I've listened to all the CEOs, and maybe if you talk to some of the CEOs of the hospitals, leader of the opposition, you might get some input. Rather than sitting there and constantly criticizing from day one, putting confusion with the public about paid sick days, rather than sending inaccurate information out to the public and hurting the public, why don't you come and join us to support the people of Ontario for once, rather than just sit there and criticize and criticize. You know, it's like listening to nails on a chalkboard, listening to you.
I wanted to ask about the Premier's nails on the chalkboard comment there in question period. Is that appropriate language to be using in the legislature?
Well, you know, it's really not about me personally. It's about, you know, the fight that I have and that I bring here to Queen's Park on behalf of everyday families. The criticism as well as the proposals that we're bringing forward. At the end of the day, when the Premier doesn't like being questioned, doesn't like being criticized, he goes to the worst possible place. That's just who he is. But who I am is somebody who's going to come here every day and fight for the people of Ontario, regardless of the kind of mud that the Premier is going to sling.
Does he owe you an apology?
I think he owes the people of Ontario an apology. I mean, this kind of behavior from a Premier is wholly inappropriate, and and it's unfortunate that he doesn't see it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it is a sexist comment. Let's be real, right? So it's like calling a woman shrill.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, you can. A man's passionate. He can talk for at length and get loud. And wow, he's so charismatic and passionate. And the woman does the same thing, and she's shrill. I mean, they're like. But your point is, Matt, that this is what the conversation as opposed to the substance of what they were disagreeing on.
Yeah, and I think it shows. I mean, the media is more comfortable to play on those sort of identity lines than even the NDP party is here. And David Dole had a good video on this. I mean, he wasn't aware of the phrase as a sexist one, which we obviously are. But the other point, which is that like the actual the complaints the NDP is raising about the rushes to reopen and making sure everybody that needs it has access to paid sick leave and policies like that. Are the relevant story, right? And I think from the surface level impression you get from the media is it is this misogyny thing, which again, like, it is misogynistic, but I worry politically about that, because guess what? It wasn't feminists that won the last two presidential races, right? I think Biden leaned into not being a feminist and not being. He was like scoffing at Me Too at the beginning of that, and I think there's a certain sense that like these politicians don't mind it being made about that, because like that's not as harmful as saying, hey, are you making it about paid sick leave, right? Because then you're gonna get guys and they're good at animating these misogynists. So it's like, I don't know, like I find it pretty problematic, and I thought David Dole did a good video on it. And I want to rush to add, I'm not blaming the NDP about this. I thought Horvath's response was perfect and put the emphasis exactly where it should be. I just think like this is how things get denuded of the actual policy implications for the culture war.
Well, it's largely a media project, as you point out, right? So they are more comfortable operating in these spaces for a lot of the reasons that we've talked about, which is that they don't have to really call balls and strikes or be more objective about the uncomfortable truth that like the party that is to the left of where Ford is right on this issue surrounding COVID.
Right.
And they don't have to make those objective determinations. And so we see this in the American media all the time. They are very happy to traffic in these areas. It's like, you know, a lot talking about issues surrounding, say, racism or sexism. It allows the media to skirt any substantive critique of policy. And it's also kind of why, too, like, to a lesser extent, we're seeing that right now CNN's talking about Q a lot. COVID was very easy for them to cover because it doesn't surround, even though, of course, all of these things intersect with class and intersect with policy. It doesn't directly do so. And it allows them to have coverage that's emotional, that's passionate, and that is, I guess, sort of involved in politics, but isn't necessarily politics itself.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's, I mean, I'm just shook by, you know, we had 2 straight presidential primaries where Bernie was attacked as a sexist ahead of Iowa. And, you know, I thought this was a semi-recent invention by the Democratic Party. Of course, I, you know, am naive in that sense because I was watching this energy deregulation C-SPAN clip from 1999, and Bill Richardson, Clinton's energy secretary, is pushing regulation as if it's going to be good for the environment. They mentioned Kyoto and good for tribes, right? So this is what I mean, this is it's not, obviously it's not the same thing, but this is a common sort of obfuscation, and yeah, it's pronounced and kind of terrifies me a little bit.